Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
It was the case of Maddox and Platt. They were a couple of, well, they appeared to be just a couple of hillbillies who had been running around robbing banks throughout Miami and Florida. And they appeared to be normal people. However, what we found out later was that they were very, very special in some sense, because the FBI, an entire FBI task force cornered them and had a huge shootout with them, because of course they wouldn't surrender. And they had a giant shootout with them, and they had to drop on them. So the entire task force, both FBI agents and police officers, they shot them to pieces, both of them. However, instead of falling down and dying, they actually got their weapons and decided to trudge through this parking lot. It was like a parking lot of one of the banks. It was a parking lot that they found at random, and they forced them into there because they were in a bunch of cars. And then Maddox and Platt just got their weapons and started marching through the parking lot in a semicircle and killing the FBI agents and shooting the police officers. At that point, they just did, and it was called the Miami Massacre. The Miami Massacre, also the Great Miami Shootout, was also called. And they shot all of them. They got all of them, and it was unbelievable what they did, because one of them was even shot through the aorta at the time, and they should have been dead. And they just marched through, and then they got in their car and they were leaving. They were leaving after they shot all the FBI agents and all the officers, and they were leaving. Then we had one hero FBI agent who had his arm shattered by Maddox and Platt, but he used his other hand, and he actually was able to shoot both of them, and he shot them, shoot both of them through the car as they were leaving, and he was able to shoot them through the neck and sever their spinal cords, and that's how they finally died. So anyway, after that happened, it was a huge scandal. It was a huge scandal. Like, how were these guys able to do what they did? This was unbelievable. And so the FBI scientists stepped forward and said, oh no, they were probably loaded up on angel dust. PCP was very popular at the time. So they said, when people are loaded up on this angel dust, they're able to perform superhuman feats, and so forth. Well, the blood test came back and showed that they had nothing in their system except a couple of cigarettes that they had smoked just before. They didn't even drink beer before they actually did this deed. And so it was a great mystery, and they were told to search for hard drugs in anywhere that they could find it, because people were looking for this explanation at the time, and there was a lot of political pressure on this situation to explain a couple of dead and maimed FBI agents, several of them in this case. And so those deputies were able to tell me that the only thing they found at this place was, they found a little altar that was a pagan sort of Norse god altar, and it appeared that these two individuals had, at that time, they did some kind of sacrifice to some evil spirits from Norse mythology. There was something to do with berserker spirits, and so I told them, I said, that's it. That's how they did what they did. They did some kind of sacrifice, and these whatever it was, the god of mischief that they did these sacrifices to, I think it was called Loki, and to the berserker spirits, and they were given these berserker spirits, whatever they are, they were given that in order to accomplish what they did, and that's what they did. They had a complete dedication on a spiritual level that inhabited them, came to them, and help them to do these extraordinary feats that they did. Anyway, at that point, what happened was the person in charge of the FBI Academy found out I was questioning people about this, and found out that I was finding this out. He then designated me as possibly being a New York Times reporter or something of that sort, and so that very much upset them. He told me he tried to make sure that I didn't graduate the FBI Academy. However, I did. I did because I knew everything he was going to do.
So to me, that doesn't really prove anything. These guys had some sort of superhuman ability or superhuman strength whenever they were in the act. I'd chop that up to adrenaline rush. I don't think that sacrificing something at the altar to a berserker god from Norse mythology is going to help you accomplish anything at all. Let's address the change of scenery. So I decided to do something special for my 100th episode. What I wanted to do was I wanted to go and film at night, set up a campfire, get like a real spooky vibe going, and film like a 1 hour long special at night. Unfortunately, from the moment that I came up with that idea until right now, when I'm out of time to make the video, it has rained every night. So it's not been a possibility. So I thought, second best option, I'll at least come outside and change the scenery and film outside today. So we're gonna try out the new microphone. Don't worry, I'm not getting rid of the Don King mic, but we're gonna try out the new microphone, check out the audio on that, and just have us a different vibe going today. I also want to say there are 3 hidden images in today's video. If you're one of the lucky people who are able to find that image, one of the 3, and post it in the Discord, go to the submissions tab and post the image that you find in today's video. If you are the first to do so, I will send you 1 item of your choice off of my shelf behind my desk, off of the shelf that's behind me in my videos. This could include my flat earth photo that's hanging on the wall, any of my books, my bookends, my pyramid light that looks like it belongs in a 13-year-old girl's bedroom, or my pyramid fidget spinner. So find one of the photos, post it in the submissions tab in Discord, and if you're the first to do so, you get to pick any item off the shelf. Second person gets to pick a second item, third person gets to pick a third item. I will also sign it before I send it to you, if you want me to do so. If you don't want my handwriting all over it, then I won't sign it. That's up to you. But that's what we're doing today to try to spice things up and make this a more special video. I hope that's exciting to at least a few people out there. I know these aren't huge things, but I thought it would be an exciting little giveaway.
When the Vatican's Advanced Technology Telescope and the Large Binocular Telescope were being built, why did the indigenous peoples of Arizona, especially the San Carlos Apaches, why did they join environmentalists in filing dozens of lawsuits before a federal appeals court to try to stop the construction of the observations on Mount Graham? The project ultimately prevailed in favor of the Vatican and NASA after an act by the United States Congress ordered it to be done. But the question remained in our mind, why had the tribal communities fought so diligently against the construction of telescopes atop that mountain? Mount Graham is considered one of the 4 holiest mountains in the world for the Apache and is considered sacred to all of the region's native peoples, and it is so because it is what we might call a stargate. In their mythos, a portal through which the star people have come since the dawn of time. And once we understood that fact, our suspicions as to why the Vatican and NASA had chosen that mountain in particular, even being willing to face a prolonged legal battle to build these telescopes on Mount Graham, including the largest binocular telescope in the world where the Lucifer device is kept, why would they have gone to all of that trouble? Why not just go to another mountain range and find basically the same height, the same environmental conditions? Why did it have to be that mountain? Now we came to learn another thing, and that is that the San Carlos Apache have these preserved ancient tales concerning Mount Graham and that geography, including stories very similar to biblical chronology. These legends involve a creator, a deceiving dragon that follows, an epic flood, and even a race of giants known as the Jindupids, who were judged and destroyed by God. According to the legend, a race of Indians called the Tartans lived in the valley between Tucson and Phoenix. These were just peaceful farmers, and they prospered until one day they were invaded by the Jindupids, described as Goliaths, who were so huge they used tree limbs for toothpicks. Well, these Nephilim were led by this massive man they call Evil Ken, who allegedly came from the northeast and were headed south to their home beyond the Gulf of Baja. These giants nearly wiped out the Tartans before they ran and hid themselves underground and in the mountains and prayed to Father Sun, who then threw this huge fireball that came down to the earth, seared the monstrous Nephilim into the scorched mountain rock, and wiped them out. Now, elements of that tale are obviously mythological, but it has a remarkable thematic coherence with Genesis chapter 6. The Apache creation myth is also interesting in this regard, as a particular version involves what they call the one who lives above, who descended down over the mountain in a flying disc at the start of creation. Their myth begins, in the beginning, nothing existed, no earth, no sky, no sun, no moon, only darkness was everywhere. And then the legend starts, before noting that suddenly from the darkness emerged a disc. One side of it was yellow, the other side of it was white. It appeared suspended in midair, and within the disc sat a bearded man, the creator, the one who lives above. Now, besides this creator who rides in a heavenly disc, there's a dragon with the power of speech that turns up, bargaining with mankind, as well as supernatural gateways associated with mountains through which spirit beings have and can come. So suffice it to say that these ancient native ideas involving flying discs, flying creators, spirit guides, even owls and a talking dragon or a great serpent, and supernatural gateways tied to mountain ranges. This is something that began long before the Vatican cast its eyes on Mount Graham. Think how much these legends mirror what the Bible teaches, including the idea that mountaintops or high towers were often depicted as places where doorways into the supernatural could be opened. For instance, Nimrod of biblical fame sets out to build a tower whose top will reach into heaven, Genesis 11:4 says. This was the infamous Tower of Babel, and Nimrod was designing it so that the top of it would extend into Shamayim, heaven, the dwelling place of God. The Jewish Encyclopedia confirms several historical records that Nimrod, who it establishes was also identified by various ancient cultures as Osiris, Orion, Apollo, Gilgamesh, that he had built the Tower of Babel specifically to ascend into the presence of God, literally walk onto a high place and enter heaven is really not as far-fetched as it sounds. There are numerous records, including in the Bible, that appear to substantiate the idea that heaven can be attained on high towers or mountainous locations. So think about Moses meeting with God on Sinai, Jesus returning atop the Mount of Olives, the 200 watchers that descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon, and other examples, including Jacob's ladder.
I do always find it very fascinating to see how religions so closely resemble each other. like the same stories, the same timelines, the same historical depictions of certain events. And to think that the Native Americans actually have these same stories when they were essentially cut off from civilization here in the United States, in a land that had not even been discovered yet for like thousands of years later. They had the same stories. I know the Bible says what does it say? All ears will hear, all hearts will be given the opportunity to come to Christ, or something along those lines. I know I'm butchering the exact quote, but it's interesting to see, even in an area where there's no chance that there was a Bible, they had the Bible stories were still there. That doesn't necessarily prove one particular religion is right and the rest of them are wrong or anything like that. To me, it's just very interesting.
As a lot of my videos have shown, aluminum is playing a really big role in whatever's going on. And the evidence just keeps piling up.
And one of the peak materials found was aluminium. So what the hell is aluminium doing floating around up at cruising altitude? So now Monsanto miraculously have an aluminium resistant seed that can grow in aluminium contaminated soil. Why would they have such a thing unless they knew of a problem that was down the line or already happening? Last year in 2015, a study came out of Keele University in the UK, and bees were found to have had massive high quantities of aluminium in their brains. This is a big problem. We need bees to keep the food chain sustained and to keep it alive. And now Monsanto have recently bought a bee research company called Biologics in 2012. And they have genetically modified a bee that can only pollinate Monsanto crops.
Genetically modified a bee that can only pollinate Monsanto crops. So they've genetically modified a bee which is constantly at threat of being on the endangered species list, and made it where it can only survive if it's eating genetically modified crops. It can't survive out in nature, eating natural, normal stuff. How does that make any sense at all?
I've never heard anyone else ever talk about this. Thunder, low, bass, drum. These are long waves. Long wave sounds travel longer throughout the environment. It dawned on me, oh my God, this may mean that drum circles, indigenous people, pagans, people celebrating a harvest, they're all coming together in community and they're drumming. And as they're drumming, these long wave sound frequencies are literally going into the mycelial networks that are underneath your feet, that are in your immediate surroundings. The mycelium is like strings on a guitar, like strings on a piano or a violin. They are reverberating from the thunderous beating of humans celebrating nature and life is causing the mycelial networks to grow. And as the mycelium is growing, it's giving more nutrients. It's helping all these other life cycles. There's more potential fruits, berries, nuts. So it emanates throughout the ecosystem. And so I realized, oh my gosh, this may be actually a feedback loop. When you're celebrating in community with music, you are actually communicating with the mycelial networks. And every one of those fibers are resonating from the sound waves. And they're responding with their fruitful acknowledgement and being able to provide you with greater sustenance.
I'm pretty sure that gentleman's name was Terrence McKenna. If I'm remembering correctly, I watched an episode of him on Joe Rogan. I think that the study of mushrooms, of psychedelic mushrooms, is something that needs to be taking place a lot more prevalently. I'm a big proponent of the theory that the sudden jump in human mind evolution, at least in the mental capacity, mental state, mental capability of the human being, I think that psychedelic mushrooms played a big part in that. I think that it probably helped to, once we discovered those and started experimenting with them, it probably helped to open our consciousness up, help us to expand our thinking, get more creative, start thinking of different ways to live and to go about living, to go about harvesting, planting and harvesting crops instead of just always hunting. It just makes so much sense when you think about it. All right, so unfortunately my iPad is dying, so I'm gonna have to carry this back into the house. That's all right, I'll get a few close-up shots of what's on my shelf. What small prizes you can win if you find the hidden photos in this video.
Watch this video with me. Darwinian evolution is dead, and these were the two things that put the nail in the coffin. Let's go ahead and play this.
Let's look at just two scientific reasons to doubt this theory. First, the Cambrian explosion. A weird and wonderful thing happened 530 million years ago. A whole bunch of major groups of animals, what scientists call the phyla, appeared abruptly within a geologically short window of time, about 10 million years. These novel animal forms, exhibiting prototypes of most animal body designs we see today, emerged in the fossil record without evidence of earlier ancestors. Did you catch that? A huge number of diverse animals appeared with no discernible antecedents. So where did they come from? This question really bothered Darwin, and he acknowledged that he could give it no satisfactory answer. Nor can scientists today. The renowned biologist Eugene Koonin of the National Center for Biotechnology Information describes the abrupt appearance of the Cambrian animals and other organisms such as dinosaurs, birds, flowering plants, and mammals as a pattern of biological big bangs. So what caused all these new forms of life to arise? That question leads to a second big doubt, the DNA enigma. In the 1950s, James Watson and Francis Crick made a startling discovery. The DNA molecule stores information as a 4-character digital code. Strings of precisely sequenced chemicals inside the DNA helix store the instructions, the information, for building the crucial proteins that cells need to survive. Unless the chemical letters in the DNA text are sequenced properly, a protein molecule will not form. No proteins, no cells. No cells, no living organisms. Bill Gates has said DNA is like a software program. Let's think about that for a second. For computers to run faster and perform more functions, they require new code. Well, the same is true for life. To build new forms of life, the evolutionary process would need to produce new genetic information, new code. But this raises questions about the creative power of natural selection and mutation. Natural selection is a simple sorting process. Species keep favorable mutations that allow them to survive, but eliminate bad mutations that cause their members to die out. No one doubts that natural selection is a real process, and that it produces minor variations. But many biologists now doubt that it produces major innovations in biological form. To see why, think again about software. What happens if you introduce a few random changes into computer code? You'll likely mess it up, right? Though it might still work if you don't make too many changes. But if you make enough random changes, your program will stop functioning altogether. You certainly can't keep doing this and expect some cool new program to pop out. There's a mathematical reason for this. In all codes and languages, there are vastly more ways of arranging characters that will generate gibberish than there are arrangements that will generate meaningful sequences. And this applies to DNA. Remember, natural selection only selects sequences that random mutations generate. Yet experiments have established that DNA sequences capable of making stable proteins are extremely rare, and thus really hard to stumble on randomly. How rare? While working at Cambridge University, molecular biologist Douglas Ack showed that for every DNA sequence that generates a relatively short functional protein, there are 10 to the 77th power non-functional sequences. Now consider that there are only 10 to the 65th power atoms in our galaxy. So finding a new DNA sequence capable of building a functional protein is like searching blindfolded for a single marked atom among a trillion Milky Way galaxies. Talk about a needle in a haystack.
And that sounds like that has officially put evolution to bed. I know that was a bit long, but it was a good one. I've talked a lot about here on this channel about how I don't believe that evolution is really how things work. And this kind of explains that it's not even possible. Evolution's a non-possible theory. It's not a possibility. So pretty fascinating that this information has been floating around out there all this time. This dude worked at Cambridge for how many years and made this discovery, essentially saying it's not possible for evolution to be a thing, and it's still the prevalent theory in science. It makes you really question science.
$2,000 a month in return for getting a chip put in your hand. You heard me right. We'll give you universal basic income, basically 2,000 euros, $2,000 a month if you allow us to put a microchip in your hand. That's exactly what's about to happen as part of the rollout of the central bank digital currencies. That's a carrot for them to rope you into this mess.
The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name.
That is some apocalyptic crap right there. There's no way I'm getting that mark. I'll go back to being a hunter-gatherer before I get that thing in my hand.
Hope you guys enjoyed your superb owl. There's Ice Spice throwing up horns and then showing off her inverted cross while Taylor Swift slams a beer. What great entertainment, beer and circus for all the kids to enjoy. Wonderful example. In case you're still in the dark about what the superb owl is, it's a massive satanic ritual, just like most broadcasts are. It's a broadcast. They're casting a spell. It's called programming for a reason, because they're programming you. And as you all watch a fixed, rigged game, just like everything else is fixed and rigged, these people are casting spells on you. And you all think it's just fucking entertainment. You guys sit there with your kids and you get fucked up and you drink and your kids see this stuff and it goes right into their eyeball. And your Swiss cheese chakra systems get filled up with demons, legions of demons. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what they're doing. And if you just pay attention, they're telling you they're doing that the entire time. It's not subtle. You know, if you guys don't care what you do to yourself, that's cool, but quit bringing the kids into this. Quit bringing your kids to this bullshit. It's ridiculous. And it's so blatant, I don't know how you don't see it. God bless, and God save us.
I don't know what the appeal is with the Super Bowl. I've never followed football. I never really got into it as a kid. My dad would watch it. I did see the infamous Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson thing happen live. That was an interesting memory. Like, here lately, the more I see about anything about the Super Bowl, it's all stuff about how it's faked and it's all rigged and the games are already predetermined. And I've seen some fairly decent evidence to back up those claims. So I don't see how anyone watches it. I don't find that type of entertainment as entertainment myself personally, but I know a lot of people are really into it, but I don't know if it's I don't know if there's like satanic elements to it or if it's just simply the fact that a lot of celebrities go there and they're all heavily enthralled in this satanic ritualism and stuff.
The official disappearing of the moon will happen in February 2024. You know David Copperfield?
Famous magician? Legend.
Well, he's back on the scene. He says his next trick will be to make the moon disappear.
Don't do that.
So he was interviewed and he says, yes, it's taken me 30 years to figure it out. It's for the Save the Children Foundation. And his quote was, one man can make the moon disappear. Imagine what we can do to make hunger, poverty, and danger go away for children.
It's like Zoolander for the magician. If I can make the moon disappear, that's not going to help anything.
He's been testing it for the past few months, and people have reported the moon disappearing. I've seen multiple TikToks that are like, there's Starfinder out, and the moon's supposed to be right there, and there's no moon. And he's asked, if any one of you sees something strange in the sky, please report it to me, because I want to figure out if the tests are going too early.
So everyone's going to be able to see it?
Not even knowing this is happening.
Yeah.
People are like, where's the moon?
We are literally in a Truman Show. And that moon isn't real. Like in Las Vegas, the sphere, we're just in one big sphere, dude.
I don't know if I believe that this is going to happen or if this is just a publicity stunt. I haven't heard any reports of the moon disappearing or anything like that personally. So if there are videos like that out there on TikTok and whatnot, I just haven't come across them. It's going to be interesting to see, though. If dude pulls that off, it's going to make conspiracy theorists run wild, because that's the only way that he could potentially do that, in my mind, is if he got whoever was projecting the hologram to shut it off temporarily. That's the only thing I can think of. But guys, that's the end of this video. I'm going to go ahead and call it right there. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and come back to see me tomorrow. I'll post a new video every single day. This is video 100 days in a row without missing. So if you want a channel that you can depend on to post you a video every single day, that's the type of content that you enjoy, come back and hang out with me tomorrow. I'll be here waiting on you. Guys, I hope everybody has a great, safe, fantastic Monday, and I will see you tomorrow.